Today, we have two guests from our biggest partner, our biggest trading partner, the U.S. The first guest we have is Connie Durchak, Senior Director for Industry Services for the Personal Communication Industry Association. It's the principal trade association in the U.S. for the wireless, telecommunication, and infrastructure industry. So she'll share with us how you can leverage the U.S. stimulus package and promote your business in the United States. Our other guest is Sanja Pandey, and she's my colleague in our Washington embassy in Washington, and she's the Trade Commissioner for Information Communication Technologies, and she'll provide us an overview on the broadband infrastructures in the United States. So I won't take much of your time because you've heard me speak before, so I'll invite Sanja to come up and do her presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sanja Pandey from the Canadian Embassy in Washington. I would like to do a quick poll. How many of you are familiar with the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service? Are you a member of Virtual Trade Commissioner? No. Have you seen the market report on the stimulus package in the U.S.? No. Okay. How many of you are already doing business in the U.S.? Or most of you? Great. All right. So this afternoon, I'm going to talk to you about the stimulus spending on broadband in the U.S. So the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, ARRA, or sometimes called as Recovery Act, was signed into law in February this year, giving the two federal government agencies a spending authority for $7.2 billion for broadband infrastructure projects. And because the intention of this program is to create jobs by providing timely, targeted, and temporary stimulus to the economy, there is a preference for shovel-ready projects, meaning that they would prefer to fund projects that are ready to commence immediately upon the award of the funding. So the two departments, Department of Commerce and Department of Agriculture, have these amounts of money to spend on infrastructure for broadband deployment. And the RUS, which is an organization under Department of Agriculture, and NTIA, National Telecommunication and Information Administration, and the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, are coordinating their stimulus programs to make sure that spending is done effectively, quickly, and responsibly. So I'll start with the Department of Commerce, NTIA's BTOP program, Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. The objectives of the program, as you can see on the screen, are really threefold. First, to deploy broadband infrastructure in unserved and underserved areas in the U.S. And secondly, to expand public computer center capacity for low-income, unemployed, or aged consumers, often referred to as a vulnerable population. And then lastly, to encourage a sustainable adoption of broadband service. So based on these objectives, they have three categories of eligible BTOP projects, which I just mentioned. And vulnerable population includes the low-income, unemployed, or aged populations. So I'm not going to speak too long on this slide, but this is the breakdown of the $4.7 billion under the NTIA budget authority. But what is common in their purposes and requirements is that first, they want to have applications that are going to enhance economic growth and job creation in the U.S. That is the purpose of the economic stimulus package. So the key question here would be, how many jobs will your projects create or save? as of the end of October, for instance, the recovery.gov website posted the number of jobs created or saved by the economic stimulus pack spending to date, and that was just over 300. Just gonna check my number here. Sorry, I'll get to that later. But 300, I think it was over 640,000 jobs. And the second purpose, common thread, is the benefits to healthcare, education, and children. So, for instance, how will your project go beyond providing access to broadband? So, how will your project enhance service to the vulnerable population in terms of providing healthcare delivery, education, and benefits for children? And then third is to support public safety and community anchor institutions. So by community anchor institutions, they mean public libraries, healthcare healthcare delivery centers, and medical offices and doctors' offices, schools, and whatnot. So how will your project will impact them, and how will they participate in your project? These are some of the key points that the NTIA is looking at when they evaluate the applications. And a couple of the other points I want to make are the reaching vulnerable populations, which I mentioned a couple of times already, and then lastly, the socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses. So in the U.S., they have a set aside for small businesses, Small Business Act Section 8A. You might have heard of it already. Then women-owned business, veteran-owned businesses, all those things will have some advantage in their application considerations. So I think what I would like to emphasize is that these program evaluators are looking for something beyond building the broadband network and pipeline out there. They would really like to make sure that the spending based on this quick and timely investment in infrastructure will have a lasting impact and benefit beyond this stimulus package. So it is important for applicants to make sure that your projects will have the broadband adoption, which will create the sustainable adoption of broadband, and also enhancing benefits in healthcare, education, and other public computer center capacity. And then the next one is I'm going to talk about the Department of Agriculture RUS Rural Utility Service Program. RUS had programs with a $4 billion portfolio before the Recovery Act came into law. So in effect, the stimulus spending is actually proportionally smaller than what they already have, with their objective in helping primarily the rural communities in the U.S. So under the BIP, Broadband Initiatives Program, they have $2.5 billion